We continue in the 13th letter. This letter, we spoke yesterday, that we all come, our soul, from the divine order of things, which has a right, figuratively speaking, of chesed, kindness, of expansion, and the left, which is gvura, power, strength, concealment, contraction. So our soul is rooted in one of the two of the divine. Some of us have more of an expensive personality, and some of us are more covert, concealed, hidden. And that's just the nature that we've been created with, the two basic qualities. The Alter Rebbe says now that we need to know that we have to comprise ourselves of both traits. By nature, we are one, but that's only by nature. What we need to nurture is both. Why? Because both qualities have a place and time in our divine service. So, as I've given the example before, when you're a host, you don't say to your guests, "These pancakes I don't think you should eat because your weight situation." Especially with the syrup. You don't say that as a host, because host is chesed, is kindness, is just giving. But if you are the mentor, or if you are a teacher, and you need to know your students and to be judgmental about where they're holding. If you just would be indiscriminate as a teacher, you would not be a very good teacher, because you wouldn't be able to give to one student what they need specifically over another student, because not every student needs the same thing. So you need to be very discriminating. That's gvura, that's strength, that's the power of holding back, of being able to see the quality of different people. So, therefore, necessary to incorporate both qualities. Where do we see this concept? First, the Alter Rebbe gives the example of Hillel and Shammai. Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai, for those who are familiar, were very stringent in their ruling in Jewish law. Beis Hillel was very lenient in their ruling of Jewish law. Why? I mean, isn't law the law? No. It's because even though they're holy people, but it's filtered through their soul, and their soul has a unique quality. Like we just mentioned, either from the right side of chesed or the left side of gevura. So Beis Shammai, their souls are rooted in the left side of gevura. So they were very stringent, because the left side is more calculated. The left side is more judgmental, right? And appreciating the minutia of things. And being they come from the supernal left, power, strength. Power, strength means capability of holding back, and that's why concealment, walking covertly, as we mentioned, right, in yesterday's class with God. That was their nature. Hillel, on the other hand, was of the right side. So they saw things in a manner of being lenient, permissible, because chesed is an indiscriminate giving. So how does that express itself in their perception when it comes to Jewish law? Is that their perception based on chesed will be more lenient. It will be more encompassing. It'll include more. So more things will be permissible as a result. Right? Now, this is the important thing. Since both perspectives are true, is everything okay there?
Yeah.
Okay. Since both perspectives are true and divine, we're not talking about people who are not divine. We're not talking about people just going by their nature of the animal soul. This is based on the godly soul. Since both are correct, Therefore, there has to be inclusionary of the other side. Even though their nature was Shammai, of being more stringent because that was the quality of soul, but yet often, or I wouldn't say often, but in several instances, they were more lenient than Beis Hillel. And the opposite is also true of Hillel. The house of Hillel were, in many occasions, more stringent than the house of Shammai. Why? Is because even though their soul is by nature one over the other, but we're talking about divine now. In divine order of things, the opposite quality is inclusive. Not exclusive, but inclusive. Is inclusive. So the right, chesed, incorporates the left, gvura, strength. The left, gvura, incorporates the right, chesed, expansiveness. One will be more revealed and the other, sort of one front burner, back burner. But the back burner sometimes comes to the front. In both instances. Why? Because this is the mode of the attributes the way they are in holiness. There is no division. They're incorporating each other. So chesed incorporates gvura and gvura incorporates chesed. And this is therefore the union that is made with each other, as Kabbalah explains. That's called holiness. So that's the way it is in the soul of holy sages, that how they even perceive in Jewish law, the law itself, and how there can be a difference of opinion. By the way, this teaches us something amazing about the idea that there's a difference of opinion in Jewish teachings. I mean, if there's one absolute, one God, there should be absolutely one opinion and one path. No. Here it's broken down into two basic paths, the right and the left, chesed and gvura. And being that each of our souls are tending to be one more over the other, but holiness means to be inclusionary, that there is no separation. One has to have the other. As we see in our lives, we have to have both. So that's the way it is in Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, in their souls, the way they're rooted above in supernal holiness, and how it expresses itself in Torah teachings itself, which is a phenomenal idea. This is very different than any other kind of teachings that will tell you, truth is absolute and only one way, and that's why there's no room for another. It's my way or the highway. Well, that's all coming from Klippa. That's coming from the, right? Because in Klippa, my perspective, based on the root source of my soul, will be more liberal or more conservative, more right or left, and will be exclusive. And that's why all of what's going around today in the world is not coming from a holy place. Not coming from a good place. Because, they're not the sages of Israel and don't have this godly soul that we're speaking about. The Alter Rebbe continues, where do we see this further? Not just in teachings of Jewish law, where there will be a distinction, but in action, in life itself of a daily existence. Well, Avraham Avinu, he is the embodiment of chesed, of divine kindness, of divine expansiveness. He was very expansive in his manner. He has a tent that's open on all four sides. He wants to bring everybody in. He wants to include everybody. He wants to bestow only loving kindness. And God puts him to the test. But the 9 tests that he fulfilled ultimately We're all within the bounds and the range of his natural soul of chesed. When does God say that now I know that you're truly God-fearing, that you're truly a servant of God? Came to the 10th and final test when he took his son, his only son that he loves, Yitzchak, Isaac, and he brought him on the altar. That was not an act of chesed, of kindness, of expansiveness, of inclusionary. What are you talking about? The opposite. The opposite of life. And yet he did it, and just didn't do it, but he did it with complete devotion, with complete giving himself over. Why? How can he do that? It's because if you're a true servant of God, if it's coming from the godly soul, not from the animal soul, then you're going to be able to incorporate the opposite of what your natural soul is. And that's what he did. He incorporated gvura, an act of power, strength, of withholding loving kindness, in an act of bringing his son on the altar. And therefore, that was a true expression of gvura, true expression, that was coming from the godly soul, and everything else that he did also came from the godly soul, not just, happenstance nature. And likewise, now the difference is, as I mentioned, one is in the front burner, one's the back burner. One is revealed and one is concealed. So by Avraham, the main quality that was revealed was loving kindness, and the gvura, the strength, was more concealed, but it was there when it needed to be brought to the fore. It wasn't something that wasn't mutually inclusive. He was able to include it very simply because of an act of holiness, that everything that he did was coming from that place. And Isaac, Yitzchak, was the opposite. He is Gevurah, the embodiment of Gevurah. So that was his main manifestation, right? But yet, he had the capability of loving kindness in the back burner, in the concealed manner, that he was able to access whenever necessary. The opposite trait of his father. That's an amazing concept here that we need to incorporate to our lives, and we have to ask ourselves, I have a nature, whether it's expansive of the right chesed or the left power strength, and more that power strength is withholding, contraction. Either I do things in an expansive way of giving, or I walk covertly with God, more in a humble manner. And now the question is, am I able to go against that nature? When do we know that we're serving God? Is when we can go against that nature and to do that which God needs of us. So, for example, a person might be a very, loving and including, but sometimes, when it's coming from the wrong place, you could smother another person in love, right? Because you're so loving. Yeah, but you're smothering another person. You're not giving them space. That's not coming from a good place. When's it coming from good places? That you're able to hold back and give them their space. An example. Another example is someone who is very natural on the left side, is very judgmental. Their kids, they're always on top of. They're always seeing the negative aspect of their kids because they're being judgmental. Then it's not coming from a good place. Because it's going to be very hard for you to incorporate loving kindness. But if it's a judgment in order that I can help them and not make them feel less than, I don't make them feel less than, then, you know, maybe it's coming from a good place, and the proof will be that you'll be able to incorporate the loving kindness because it's there just in the back burner. Powerful idea, folks. We need to share with others. All right. Any questions, any comments? Saw some things coming up on the screen here, but as I'm teaching, the screen first of all is a bit small, so I can't always see it properly. Let me see if there's anything I should address. Give me a moment. Showing up in our person. So Hannah says, once we understand which side our soul gravitates to showing up in our personality, it is our part, it is our refinement to work on bringing a balance. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Arya, that was a funny joke. Because, you know, with this, by the way, if you're left-handed, nothing wrong with it. Because we need to incorporate, anyways, whatever my nature is, the opposite. Okay. I don't see any questions, unless I missed something. Folks, sharing is caring. If your nature is not to share, you have to overcome our nature and to share. And if your nature is to share, so then you have to question, should I share this? Maybe this or whatever. You know, we should share that which would be proper in our divine service. Right, whatever that would be. All right, folks, thank you everybody for your comments and your... All right, I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.